Good morning, everyone. It's Louisa Munson from Feel Good Astrology. The Barefoot Broadcast and Feel Good Astrology. And I'm here with two amazing goddess friends. I've got Jennie Louisa that way. I've got Donna down there. But actually, I'm going to move myself around, put Donna up there. There you go. And then I've got you both next to each other, looking amazing and fabulous with your lovely hair and everything. So welcome to everyone that's joining us. We've already got people watching in. Please do let us know who you are and where you're from, and say hi and become part of the show. And welcome to anyone that's listening in later on. Today's show, we're going to talk about how we adapt to change when we find out our story was a lie. Now, you know, Donna and Jennie have met up with me before, and we've chatted about all aspects of life and feeling and family and all sorts of things. So I'm sure we're going to come at this from a very different angle. But it was your suggestion, Donna, wasn't it? Do you want to give me a sort of feel for how that subject matter came up for you?
Yeah. Hello, everybody. I was talking to you, wasn't I, Louisa, a week or so ago? Obviously, if anyone's watched, I am delving, or not delving. I'm kind of got no choice but to be in this sort of deep emotional voyage that I'm in. And the noticing thing for myself and for a lot of other adoptees is coming to terms with the fact that what you thought was the truth for so many years. I mean, for some adoptees, it's really, really complex. Sorry, I might be getting a bit darker. I'm hoping my light is going to be okay. I'm just like fading in and out. I'll try and sort it out. I'll try and sort it out when Jennie's talking, in and out.
Don't worry.
Yeah, but basically, we live our life believing that everything is a certain way. And then we find out, a lot of us adoptees later in life, 40, 50 years old, that wasn't the truth, that we were sort of like covered by like what we call a fairy tale, like this fairy tale that everything's normal, everything's supposed to be this way, everything's okay. And inside a lot of adoptees, we know something's not right. We feel we feel broken inside, but we don't know why. And because this whole like cover up that everything's okay, we are the ones that have to confront the fact that for 50 or 30 or however many years, we thought that it was one way, and now we've got to deal with the fact that it wasn't a fairy tale, that all of these hidden emotions that we were feeling were real. And we couldn't talk about it then. But the hard thing is you can't talk about it now either, because now you really need to have gotten over that and brushed it away and put it under the carpet. So not only have you, so you've got to feel this new sort of like inner truth, which is so big for a human being if it's their own truth. But and sort of get through that. And then and yet nobody else seems to understand why on earth that's even a big deal in the first place. Yeah. And so it's like, wow. And that's what I'm going through at the moment. I'm actually reading pieces from my books from just 2-3 years ago, where I am painting such a different story. So where, and then you get confused. It's like, well, it's like, where's the authenticity in this? What's real? Is that real? Because that's a lovely story. Well, it's still lovely. It's still lovely, but that's not the truth anymore. So how do I feel now in this new truth? And this new truth is what can cause a lot of emotional and sometimes even suicidal things within adoptees, because they just can't accept it. I mean, one guy I was speaking to the other day, he's 60. He found out he was adopted just at 55. He didn't know. He thought his parents were his parents, real parents. They're now dead. He's buried them, and now he's found out they were never his parents.
Wow.
How does he navigate that? How did he come through that? The same person that he was when he thought that they were his parents.
Yeah.
But nobody understands him. And it's like, wow, that's taking what I'm dealing with to a whole deeper level here. But it's the same. And I'm now working or wanting to work with people on how to learn to love their story. So this is an area that I really want to get in with my own and obviously with others, and then feel confident to go forward with all the complex stories out there. So that's where it came from. Like, you know.
Well, I mean, first of all, we've got a couple of responses coming in. Hola, bon dia. So looking forward to this from Carlton saying, fuck, that must be a massive shock. Poor bloke. Sarah Taylor saying, good morning, deep divers. I love that. We are deep divers. Yeah, you appear to be a really good person to facilitate and navigate that journey and help people through that. Now, Jenny and I, as far as I know, we don't have the same story as you, but have similarly found out things about our life that maybe wasn't quite right. Like, you know, with the themes of our shows, you know, where we were talking about emotions and talking about stuff revealing, you know, I know in my world, I've had realizations that everything wasn't as I thought it was. And then all of a sudden there's this series of mini awakenings, you know, where like new information comes to me and I'm like, oh, wow, that's not as it was. Oh, that's not as it was. I've also been very intimately connected with people who later find out they've got a secret brother or sister. So they weren't adopted, but there was, you know, a big family secret. And I was part of a family that had a big family secret. Obviously, I can't reveal any details because it's not my story to share. But I'm aware that this goes on a lot more than we realize. Jenny, I'm sure from your perspective in nursing and, you know, in assisting people at all different times in their life on their journeys, you've experienced some of this in your way. What are your first thoughts? And welcome to the show, by the way.
Hello. Well, first of all, I think it's such a complex subject to try and delve into. And yes, I've got some stories that I could share, but I'm not going to today because, again, that they're not fully my story to share. But it was something to do with, it wasn't a lie, it was more of an omission of the truth, which I think can be as difficult to deal with when it shifts your foundational kind of your security in a way. But the way I've dealt with this, and this came up with me, I never thought it really had impacted me that much until quite recently when I started to try and understand why I don't trust people very much. And I think that was because at a very significant point in my life, I had this realization of why was I never told the truth about this? Like, why? Like, I just could not wrap my head around it. And the process I've been through about that really is understanding that there's different kinds of lies, isn't there? There's lies that can be manipulative and coercive and that can try and make somebody do something that they don't necessarily want to do. And then there's like protective lies. And I know that that omission was as a protective kind of mechanism, but a misplaced one. Yeah. And I also know that there wasn't just one person involved in this scenario. There was many people involved in this scenario, and they all had their own reasons why, or you know, why they might lie or not hold the truth, and I think that once we try and understand that all of this there's a web, isn't there? It's a whole web of kind of lies, and lies were built on top of lies and things like that. I imagine in the scenario that you were talking about with the man that you're helping, there was a lot of lies along the way to keep that a secret. And, you know, it must seriously shake somebody's foundation of truth. But you know that when we were talking about in previous discussions about is suffering kind of a necessary part of the human condition, perhaps people that have those real foundational lies in their story, that's part of their story. Do you know what I mean? It's part of their why they were here, what they had to learn on this journey or whatever. I don't know.
I'm not
saying that I'm not saying that people kind of choose it or anything like that, or it's just like, it's what shapes, what's helped shapes people. And I don't know the situation that you're talking about with the man, but did he have a happy upbringing with his adopted parents? Or
yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? It's like, there's so many reasons why people will, back in the day, in the baby scoop era, that's what adopted parents were taught to do. They were encouraged and told that that's the best thing to do. So these parents are doing, a lot of them, what they think is the right thing out of love for the child, because they know that's all they know. So yeah, it's very difficult for him because there was a huge lie, but they're not alive for him to talk to. There's nobody alive for him to do this. So he's got to come to terms, because everybody's got their own story, and he's got to now create his new story, if you like.
Yeah.
But from hopefully from a place of love. That's where I would want to come in, is what you've said, Jenny, is to try and somehow look at the bigger picture as to why does this happen to you? What is it about you that you're here for, with all these tools now to go forward with? That's what I'm keen to sort of.
And also why the lie was kind of started in the first place, like people generally do lie out of protection, don't they? Or they don't want to get into trouble. Or they're being manipulative. Like there's lots of different types of lies. But I think that most people lie because they're afraid of the consequences of what might happen. And they're already, by making a lie, they're already fixing kind of that into a box, aren't they? It's like there's no exploration of that lie, and that's quite difficult when people want to try and understand why they don't have any starting point, like, of why. But I think we all come from our own, like, we behave in certain ways from our own kind of background and history, and this ancestral thing, I think, keeps like repeating over and over and over again. And at some point, someone has to be brave enough to, to break that chain, is to not lie and to be truthful. And I think that the pain of being lied to is something that is quite difficult to describe when it's a real significant thing that shapes your life, that it has a real meaning. It's a very difficult subject to try and pin down into one thing, because it's so multifactorial as to why the circumstances and everything else. It doesn't make it easier to deal with. Well, I think it does, actually. I think if you can have a perception of where that person was when they came up with the lie, or they made the lie, and why they made the lie, then there can be some kind of understanding and moving on from it.
There's Can I just appreciate that you're here? I just wanted to say, because I recognise it's really early in the morning for you, Donna. What time is it where you are?
Well, there is a slight hour benefit to last time, so it's 20 past. Yeah, it's 20 past 6. Yeah.
Oh my God, bless you.
So yeah, and then my lighting's going all a bit. I'm glad you can still see me, but God knows what's going on behind. It's like
it's really amazing. I mean, what you're talking about there is really interesting. Like that. He had a really, really great life until he found out about the lie.
Well, there's that, but there's also the fact, like a bit like with my life, it's like, it's I had love, had unconditional love from my mum and dad. I always have. But I've always known something wasn't right. But I've kept that within myself, because adoptees tend to keep everything locked in, because no one talks about this. So it's just like, well, I just better be grateful because at least I'm safe. But that doesn't stop these emotions and these inner feelings going on. And actually, so what I began doing is like living a different self, because myself was so severely severed, I realize now, that I moved as far away from that feeling as possible from such an early age. It became very easy for me to mask how I really felt, with sort of really, really bad feelings and really good feelings never really got felt because I wouldn't allow them to get to this close place that was hurt. So all this was going on, and I didn't know until 2 years ago, or about in the last sort of 18 months. Now this is the same for him, but he didn't say anything. But now it's all coming to, it all starts to make sense.
So can I just say, so I mean, you grew up knowing you were adopted, didn't you?
I did, yeah. I knew I was adopted. Yeah, absolutely.
And this guy didn't know he was adopted, but always had the sense that something wasn't quite right.
We've all got this sense that something's not quite right, within ourselves. Because I mean, if you think about it, we really are not with our family. We're not. It's an intuition, isn't it? I realize now that I am extremely intuitive, and probably was from really young. But I never knew. I took all those feelings in and just sort of absorbed them internally as my issues. Not that, wow, this is real. This is not right. This isn't right. You know, it was like, oh, I'm wrong. Something's wrong with me. And so a lot of us adoptees have got a lot of emotional issues, because anyway, whether we're lied to or not, because we've been hiding all of these emotions that just haven't felt right, but we've never communicated them. Because who do we communicate them to?
Yeah. Good point.
Until we meet other adoptees that have all gone through the same thing. And it's like, wow, I wasn't on my own for 50 years. I wish I'd known, you know, and that's the bit. So you've got to deal with that. And a lot of offspring have been affected by adoption. But it's only in later life that you realize, oh, I've messed my child up, because I didn't know that's why I felt so insecure inside myself. And that's now been passed over to my child, but I didn't realize. But now it all makes sense. It all starts to make sense in later life. And when you've got that huge lie that's there, wow, you've got that on top of all of this. So it's a really important factor that I'm really, really navigating, because I can't really go forward with a program with how to love your story until I've really gone to depth with this. You know?
That's the uncomfortable truth, isn't it? We have to go there ourselves first.
Yeah, that's what I mean right now. Yeah.
Jenny, you look like you wanted to say something.
No, I was just going to say, I think actually kind of dealing and processing with the fact that you've been lied to is easier than dealing with the part that you always felt was missing, or that you didn't understand, because that's the part that brings in a lot of the confusion. And like you say, there's just an intuitive knowing that something isn't what you're being told it is. But you can't really quantify that, because you don't know what it is. So you can't, and you haven't been given the opportunity to do that. But I think the whole discussion about lying and truth is quite important, like right now with what's been going on with the whole kind of COVID thing. And I think that it's not by accident that lots of people are processing this part of them now, when all of this has just happened kind of globally. And I think that when kind of all that kind of kicked off, and people were starting to question whether or not what we were being told was the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. I think that triggered a lot of people into kind of a bit of a spiral and a bit of a dark night of the soul, like we were talking about before, and that dissolution of self. And kind of maybe this is like global healing of trust and truth issues. And you know, we're having to process it individually before it can be a collective thing.
It does seem to be the season for it. We've got, before we carry on, I just want to read out some of the comments that are coming in. We've got a good day from Suze, who is joining us and saying, it turns out my grandfather, whose name I have, is not my biological grandfather. My father and I discussed it before he passed. I was looking for cousins. It turns out my father was his only offspring.
DNA ancestry is now bringing out a lot. I mean, people in the 60s and 70s did not realize that you would be able to spit into a tube and send it off, free post, and find out exactly where you're from. And that's what's going on now on a big scale. So it's coming together from all angles. You know, people, even mothers that are adopted but don't want to find their family, their offspring want to. So that's how coming out of the fog. And the term for adoption is coming out of the fog. But what I'm realizing is everybody's coming out of some sort of fog. That's what
Yeah.
it's like. This is the adoption fog, but I'm realizing that there's a fog for everyone. There's a
Mm.
fog for me right now with the dark, with the light. And
Yeah, I like
everything
it.
behind me.
It's atmospheric.
I keep coming out, don't I?
Carl is saying we're born into a massive lie. The way the world is presented to us, are we not? I like what you said, Jenny. Like where nothing is what we've been told. It's like everything is not as we've been told.
Yeah.
To that, you can't handle the truth. And we have the seminal conspiracy theory of modern life. It's a sham. It's interesting because I realize I don't know the real ancestry of our children, because Carl's mum, obviously I can't talk too much about it, it's not my story. She was adopted into a family, and I believe she knows a few details about her real family, but she doesn't want to share it with anyone, which is her choice. But like you were saying, Jenny, you know, down the line, other descendants want to know, and they can actually find out now. Susie's saying, it was not talked about earlier in life. My father was shamed as a child by other kids. The poor guy explained a lot. And Carl's saying, for me, it begs the question, is happiness in me or is happiness in circumstances? We're all screwed if it's the latter. And then Owen is saying, good morning, goddesses. Isn't that lovely? Thank you, Owen. See you later, mate. And Susie's saying, I read a lot of biographies. Amazing what people suffered as children. Yeah, there's a little bit going on here. We have the moment, we have our stories, the past. Where do we want to be? We have a choice, which is an unbearable burden, or is also our salvation or slavation.
Salvation.
A good word. A wise man once said, where are you right now? Sarah's saying, yes, we are massively coming out of the fog. And aren't lots of kids brought up by men who aren't their fathers unknowingly? Yeah, I agree. I just think this is a much bigger, I mean, it's an interesting scenario because your friend, the person you're working with, he found out the truth. Did his actual adopted parents tell him before they passed, or did he find out after they passed?
He found out it was through his health, because, and it all started to make sense because his family were really ill. They died quite early, actually, but he was fine. He never got any of these sort of illnesses. It was all very straight. But when he went for the test, expecting to also be on his way out, he was a full bill of health, and it all kind of started coming out from there because of his health. He was just absolutely adamant and sure that he was going to go the same way, because they didn't tell him, and they've all gone when he found this out. So he's very much on his own with this. As far as, you know, he's not, because he's got a lot of adoptees now, but
there's a lot more to unpick there as well, isn't there? Because like he's had this threat of dying early hanging over him.
Yes,
and then he finds out that he hasn't got those problems, but there's a reason why he hasn't got those problems. Is because
and he's got his whole life ahead of him now. He's got none of those issues, but he's
which
now
should be a gift.
Is a gift.
Yet it might not feel like a gift.
No. He's got a lot of issues now.
Has he got any chance of trying to trace any of his biological family? Or
yeah, I think there is. I think so. Yeah, I mean, I think he's. I mean, how I know this guy, he's not really a client of mine. He's a leader within one of the groups that I'm in. So he's really, helping himself and helping others, as a lot of us are that are, going through these. Thankfully, we're going through a lot of this, but. I'm not sure of all the whether he's found his biological family. It's not great. He's really not great. He talks about it quite a lot. The big part for him is the fact that he didn't know. He didn't know any of this, and he's now that was it. He did the ACE. Is it the ACE score? ACE, there's an ACE, and I'll have to look. It's called the ACEs score. He did that, and he was a certain score. We need to maybe look that up for next time. But he did a score years ago, and it was low, and then he's done it now, and it's high, which shows that he has got some really serious emotional issues, but he didn't have them before. So my question is, well, that's a real thing I need to understand, because it's like, well, where are you really? I think Carl just asked that. It's like, where are you? Where's your happiness? Is it in the story, or is it genuinely in yourself? Like,
well,
I'm just looking up right now. It says calculating your ACE score. It's about measuring resilience. not all children with high ACE scores wind up having severe health or social problems, but it does not measure positive factors. It measures a list of factors that can help in having resilience. So it's really hinting at trauma.
Yeah.
You know, like how much trauma do you have?
Yeah. So now he was all right. Obviously, he was all right, and now he's off the scale. And it's like so he's dealing with that. It's like and that's the thing. It's like you do these surveys, you get these scores, and they sort of he's now in a panic because of these scores. And it's like, well, my question is, well, where were you before? Were you in such a panic before you knew that?
Yeah.
How much of this is creating the panic for you? You know, and that's where I want to get to, is like how much of this knowing of this story and therefore, and what's real, knowing it, you know, it's so complex.
What he experienced, though, is very real, isn't it? The whole thing is very real. He lived through all of it, just the part that he didn't know. But what I would say now is with this guy is that maybe he's always had some issues growing up. Part of that is not feeling that there was something that wasn't right, but not, and he became closed and he learned to not deal with his feelings. But he was happy, like he was happy and stable, but he closed everything off. And now he's being confronted with having to deal with his feelings, and it's gonna feel crazy and messy and not very pleasant. And it's definitely that whole kind of dissolution of self thing he sounds like he's going through now. And he maybe, if he never found out, maybe he would have never had this opportunity to be able to analyze his story so much. And, you know, the understanding that that lie, while it is massively significant to his journey, hasn't defined him because he's already got to however old he is now. Do you know what I mean? And then now all of a sudden everything's changed and the rug's been pulled out from underneath him and he's now got to find his footing again. But that process is confusing and it's shit and it's not very nice. And it, you know, there's lots of ways obviously that he can help himself deal with that. But if he's talking about it at least and he's sharing his story, that's a massive step because other people will be interjecting with advice and I guess with his like process.
I've just looked up ACE and it stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. So it's quite handy, and it's saying where you have lots of adverse childhood experiences, it's linked to having health issues, including risky health behaviors, chronic health conditions, low life potential, and early death. So I think that's why, you know, the psychologists, you know, put people through those tests to see the ACE score. What occurs to me is like, I think when anyone gets a shock, it's really, really normal for them to go into that moment of grief and shock and realizing the enormity of having. I think it's okay to have some fallout and to, you know, to go into your story, etc., etc. And at some point, and I don't know how long it is it a month? Is it 6 months? Is it a year? Is it 5 years? Is it 10 years? But we always have a choice to work with it after.
But if we've got the tools,
we've got the tools, and he's got you, who's already going through that level of inquiry, that intense self-inquiry.
I'm glad he's found others with tools, and I think for me, I was looking for tools for myself from 2001, really, without realizing what I was looking for these tools for. I just knew that I was a little bit blind and I needed some tools to help me because I didn't feel complete, but I didn't know why for another 20 years. But these tools of mindfulness, philosophy and coaching and NLP and, you know, all of these things I was doing. And then it's like then I realized the story. I thank God I've got these tools because it did take a while, a good year of like, you know, slump. I can't get up. I need to process this. The grief for my birth mother was incredible because it was like 50 years of like, well, you know, a load of years where I just sort of, I knew she was dead and I'd sort of really cried, but I never really grieved because I never really connected. So that was the slump. But then I had the tools I even had the tools throughout the slump. I knew the importance of getting up in the morning. If I didn't, and I didn't kind of help myself, I was going to fall back down further. So what about these adoptees that haven't got those tools before they find someone like me? And that's where, you know, because this is, as a trauma coach before, wow, this depth of this trauma rocked me. It nearly took me out. So I understand why 1 in 4, it's like 1 in 4 adoptees do take their own. The statistics are awful.
Seriously,
for adoptees.
1 in 4.
It's really high, and it's a lot of people do not realize the rate of suicides among adoptees. And I'm now not only knowing these facts, but understanding why, because it is such a, you know, it's so deep and emotional, and it's engulfed our lives, all our lives, and it's like, and yet everyone's like, oh, just put it away. You don't need to be worrying about this. And it is, it's really, really high on the stats with suicide adoption, and a lot of people don't know. Sadly, birth mothers statistics are not even recorded, and they're through the roof. And I know that because I know that, but they're not even recorded. There's no stats on birth mothers, which is a really sad thing, because so many children are being separated from their birth mothers, but the birth mothers are just not being recognized. And I think that's how it's able to sort of still carry on, if you like. I think if the stats on birth mothers was out there, then this what I call now a racket would have to stop. And I don't, it's not that I disagree with adoption. I just think that the process with having that child should be different. The child should know from the very, very start and understand that there's been a trauma, and we're with you, and we'll talk about it as much as you need to ensure that it doesn't impact your life, because if we don't, it will. And that's what needs to change. And adopted parents need to have gotten over their own trauma as well before they have any child that's somebody else's. They have to do that, because too many. Sorry, that's my phone. There's too many.
Coming from me.
So it really is an area that I'm thankfully becoming very, very involved and passionate about. The direct experience has just hit me like a ton of bricks, and I have to go forward now with my serving on this, because it's obvious why I'm here. It makes perfect sense. What's why I'm here now.
I also think we change as women when we become mums as well, or when we consider becoming mums, because you can understand your position. Obviously, you've got your own position, Donna, of knowing what happened to you, and you can also understand, or I don't know, maybe you don't understand what choice your mum had, you know, when she was a mum. Like you've approached motherhood differently to your mum, and you've been in a different situation. But I know with becoming a mum and having a child, all of a sudden I started to review everything differently instantly. And anytime I'd ever judged a mum, that changed as well.
I mean, I'm really pleased, because I was really, really good mom. It didn't impact me at all. I didn't look at my son and think, oh my God, how did my birth mother give me? I just wasn't there. I was just so connected with him. I'd say more now at 13, there's a risk of me messing him up, because but you know, the good thing is I'm talking to him now. I talk to him about trauma. I'm talking to him about my own, you know. I'm still a smoker, and I explain to him like why, you know, and I can really explain to him now what's going on in a way that we can talk. So it's great. But it's there's a lot of damage. There's a lot of damage done for children from adoptees, because just the whole realization of how could my own mother have done, you know, it almost, I think for a lot of adoptees, it just comes flooding onto them like a ton of bricks. Like, how on earth you've given me up at this tiny bundle of joy away, you know, and then all these flood of emotions come up for yourself. I didn't have that. But what I have had in the last few weeks is this huge feeling of like, my birth mother, she was doing the right, she was wanting to do the right thing for me. I do believe her gut instinct was for me to go to a good home and to have a better life. She was coerced by social services to do that. That bit I didn't agree with. I much more wish she'd been coerced to take the support that she should have had from them, not to take, you know, but she was coerced. But I do believe, and this is now part of my story that I'm believing, that her gut instinct was to do a better thing for me than she could do for herself. And you know what? She got that. Yeah. She got that. My mum and dad are wonderful people. And I know she's up there and knows that now. And they've done a great job. And they still are. So that piece is wonderful. And I'm holding that now as part of my true story. Because there's love there. She wanted me to go out of love to someone else that would love me. And that transaction worked. But the damage, sadly, was already done for her and for me. But we didn't know. And that's why her life was turmoil. And actually, so was mine. But thank God I had a cushion of love. That bit was so important. I wouldn't be here now without that. I just wouldn't. That foundation of love has kind of really helped me be who I am. You know, and not completely fall off the rails. I've always had my mum and dad to pick me back up once I recognised that they were there and loved me. You know, so yeah, it's nice now. But I fell out of love with my birth mother for many years. I didn't forgive her. How could she die like that when I needed her so much? You know, how dare she not be in my life? And therefore, my behaviour just went off the rails because of that, because of the story I was believing in my head. It's so important that we understand our story and really look at it. You know, and if it's not the truth, or we don't know it's the truth, then we create our own story around that, rather than making up a truth that may, you know, incur more behaviours and traumas. And if it's not the truth, then a part of our story is I don't know the truth to that. And then how do I feel about the fact that I don't know that truth? Let that be your story, rather than making up a story. I was making up a story, but I didn't know. That I was making up a story.
Well, none of us really know how to handle our emotions when we're small. Like, none of us are taught. We're taught by people that don't know themselves. And you raised a good point earlier, you know, about like kids should know right from word go, like that the truth should be there. And what I also recognize is it takes a good few years for the kids to be talking and understanding everything. And then another few years before they start to understand context. And then another few years, they might be 10 and they might get the truth of it, but not really get the truth of it. And so even though you might have this desire to tell them the whole truth right from word go, you need the compliance and buy-in of everyone else in the environment that your child is in to maintain that truth with them, to say, yes, you are adopted. But of course, you know, we're raised in a society that tells white lies and tries to protect, and we're a messy race, really, aren't we? All of us, you know, we're a messy species, you know, in our desire to do good and stuff, we tell fibs. It's impossible. You know, like when I hear your story, I hear possibilities for sure. I hear like the possibility for healing and understanding and this, that, and the other. But hearing the depth of your pain, or just like some of it, obviously, because that's, you know, you've been exploring this your whole life, and you know, the person that you're working with, you know, he sounds like he's got a lot to cope with. Hearing these situations, I just realized there's no, like, how can there be a perfect situation? It reminds me very much of, you know, like people when they get divorced, and, you know, like there might be stepchildren who always feel like they're not part of things. And it doesn't matter how much, a bit like adopted parents, like step parents might really want to care. And they're aware that they're not their real children. And yet they really want to care. But there are all these impossible situations all around the world, and every one of us has got some skin in the game somewhere.
Yeah.
Like, how do we move beyond, or how do we come to terms with it?
I mean, I think my mom, she saw, the only answer I used to get, bless her, is like, when was I told that I was adopted? Oh, I just remember you singing in the garden with your foster brother. You are adopted, I am fostered, blah, 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 blah. So I guess from my mom's point of view, she might have thought that that was going on, you know, that was open and out, you know, with amongst the other children, like, you know. But obviously the depth of conversations wasn't around then. And even now with children, like certainly not in the 70s, you know, when I sat down talking to them, understanding how they feel about being fostered and me explaining how I feel, and having, you know, really there should be a person there, a therapist of some sort, speaking with the foster children and the adopted children, really questioning how do we really feel, you know, and really going down. But that wasn't there. And it needs to be, because, and I guess within those families you're talking about, I mean, it's just about communication. Let's just be as honest and open as we can with what we do know with each other from a place of love. Can we do that? Or, I mean, that's a hard thing, I think, for a lot of people to do. But if we could do that, and like, you know, the step families and the step mates, you know, just as long as we all know that love is there, and we're all okay, it's all a bit of a mismatch, but we love each other, and that's what's important. And for the children to grow up knowing that, and just knowing that there's lots of other complicated things going on, but we love each other, and we're happy to talk about anything that may be getting in the way of your understanding of this going forward. There's none of that, I don't think. There's not much of that, I think, that's missing for a lot of children, because you're right. How do we process all of this craziness of anyway, let alone all these extra things on top with different parents, different families, different, you know, all of this as well. It's like, how do we navigate it without messing us up? And I think that's why we have got so many messed people here. It's like, this is really a hard place to enter, isn't it? Actually.
Jenny, you want to share something?
No, I just think I mean, I've always been a little bit like this, but I've always tried to understand the other perspective on things. Like when people tell me a story, I always try and think, well, where was the other side coming from at the time? Yeah. And in terms of adoption, it's the system that like people need to be angry about and like have to heal. That's what needs healing, is the system as well, because in ancient civilizations, or when we lived in a different way, there would have been a mother's kind of circle that would have enveloped that mother who was having trouble, and they would have accepted the child, and the child would have been raised within the community. Like, you know, I'm talking a long time ago. Yeah. And now, you know, the system is that the mother can't have the baby or raise the baby for whatever reason. So we're going to take that baby away and we're going to put it in, or a child away, and we're going to put it in several foster homes, or we're going to put it in an adopted home that might not be suitable for them. Or, you know, you've got children that are being adopted into kind of gay parents, haven't you? And there's implications for all of them. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that the circumstances that anybody lives under has an impact on them, regardless of the true healing comes from understanding that everything else external to you can't change. You can't do anything about that. You can't change the past. You can't do anything. That it starts with you today. Like the only thing that you can change is the way you frame something or the way you think about something. And I'm not talking about people that are stuck in like abusive situations or when there's stuff like that going on, because that's different and it's an extra addition on top. And I'm sure there's a lot of adoptees that don't just have the trauma from separation, but then they also have trauma within the environment that they're then put in, which compounds obviously everything else. But it's the system that we need to change. It's the ideas around, you know, I don't believe that any mother, there might be a few, but I don't believe that there is any mother that gives up a child without there being a deep reason there. And that might be their trauma or their ancestral trauma or their circumstances, or that they know. Because most women when they're pregnant, I'm not saying all, because there are some women that don't take it seriously, and you have women that have 7, 8 abortions, 9, 10 abortions in a row, or they have 5 children and they're all put up for adoption. But there's something broken there, isn't there? There's something broken in that environment. It's the mother that needs healing, like before we can like move on with any kind of things in the future. And I've lost my train of thought now, but it's just that I don't think any woman does it without feeling. And if they don't feel, there's a reason why that woman's not feeling, and why she can give a baby away and it not impact their life in the future. I'm pretty sure that most adopted mothers do have huge traumas that they go through from even thinking about giving up their child or giving away their baby. And when I had my first pregnancy, which ended in miscarriage, it wasn't a planned pregnancy. And I remember going to I didn't want to have an abortion, but I also didn't feel at the time that I was ready to have a baby. And I didn't feel that my circumstances were quite right. So I went for a scan to find out if everything was okay and how many weeks I was and stuff like that. And as soon as I saw that heart flickering on the monitor, I thought, well, there's no way that I can, I have to go through this pregnancy. And I cried, and I was crying in the thing. And the midwife said to me, she said, I can tell you that no woman, when they first find out they're pregnant, there's a sense of fear, like the first, not always, but there is sometimes a sense of fear, of like a fear of how this is going to change me. How am I going to cope? How's this baby going to be? This is not just baby's not just for Christmas, is it? Do you know what I mean? It's for life. And there must be deep-seated trauma from the mother's perspective too. And from anybody going through any kind of dealing with any kind of trauma or past hurts or things like that, I think you have to kind of stop trying to analyze what people's intentions were when they did something, because that's on them, it's not on you. And start dealing with, okay, your self-love and the care that you have for yourself and the way in which you treat yourself and others around you, and really work on self rather than trying to understand everybody else, because the times have changed, things have moved on. The circumstance that someone made a decision in 50 years ago is totally out of context today because of the way that we live. And in the 50s and 60s, when a lot of babies were it became very common, didn't it, that there was formal adoptions through the state service. They were people that were from the Second World War. There was a lot of trauma that was left over from the Second World War. There was lots of people that had relationships with other people that they probably shouldn't have done during that time. And, because of the circumstances that were happening then. And we almost can't judge that in our current context, because it's so different than it was back then. And like you say, now with adopted children, it's encouraged that they're told that they're adopted from a very early age, isn't it? Right. And to try and understand their story from an early age, so that they don't have that shock and confusion. But I think that shock and confusion will always be there, because it's always a separation, right?
Well, yeah. And because if you think the trauma, you said that all those things that the mother finds out when she's pregnant, after a few months, the baby is picking up on everything that's going on in there.
Yeah.
So the trauma, then obviously there is the separation. But then if you are going to adopted parents that have also still got trauma from miscarriages and, that's not gone through that, it's just the answer is have a baby through adoption. That's the solution. The solution should be, no, you need to go and get support for yourself and understand what your trauma, all of these emotions that you've gone through losing your child, rather than, because actually what you're doing is you're otherwise replacing that child with somebody else's, but that child will never actually be your own. So that child is then coming from trauma into trauma, and then got their own trauma anyway, and then having to navigate all of this other trauma. And I do actually believe a lot of us adoptees are born, well, we're all born with superpowers, but I think we've got some really powerful ones, adoptees. We've come here for a reason to break this, because we're breaking it. We're breaking this ancestral cycle that's just, it's full of trauma. And if we don't stop it now, then, well, I think we are, because voices are getting heard for the first time. I mean, you're right, it's been going on for 50, 60 years, but there are so many adoptees now on TikTok, on Twitter. There's anger, there's all the emotions out there. They are out there. They are screaming from the rooftops. listen
It's
to
a
me.
bit, I think it's a big release, isn't it, that's happening kind of collectively. That's what it feels like to me.
Yeah.
And there are some people that maybe they won't in this lifetime work through all that and come through the other side and, you know, really understand kind of why we are here and what we're doing. But there is a lot of people that are really deeply analysing their story, really, and their sense of self. I see that in lots of different people in lots of different ways. And there are some people that it's going to be too difficult for them to do because, like you said, Donna, they don't have the tools, they don't have the support, they don't have that comforting arm around them that says it's going to be all right, you know, let it all out, let's deal with this, let's start from the beginning, like let's start from there and let's move on. Like, I think there definitely is this big collective thing, and I also think truth and lies are a big part of that.
Yeah, I feel like I'm moving through something. We all are. Like, I'm moving through this somewhere else. Like, there's so many other wonderful insights outside of this adoption piece of dark and light, and just seeing more. It's just feel like I'm seeing so much more obvious. But to get to this, I've needed to get to this part of my story. Because it's there. I can't bypass this and get to understanding. I have to go through that. And I think that's the same for everyone. It's the truth of ourselves. And then once we start to look at that and go there, then loads more will open up, which is why we're here in the first place. So I think you're right, Jenny. It is. It's our story that it's so important that we know that, so that we can then open up and look at all this other thing that we know is not right. Well, it's not right. It's certainly not right. So let's figure it out and get our stories straight, and then we can find out what the hell we're doing here.
I don't know if we'll find out.
Good luck with that one. Talking of stories, I've got more things coming up in the chat that I want to share. So Carl's saying, I always thought a lot of adopted people gravitated towards me. Now I think it might just be so many people are adopted. What are the statistics, Donna? Do you know?
Yeah, I don't know. I'll get them.
Yeah,
I'll put them in the show. I'll send them
Carl,
to you.
it is true. Carl does seem to know a lot of adopted people. And it's interesting that his mum was adopted. In fact, I received a message from somebody who listens to a show, because I said I was doing this show a couple of days ago, and someone sent me a message and said, I look at this from a different angle. I was adopted at 1 week old, found the paperwork by accident when I was 10. My thoughts were how grateful I was at the family who took me in and that they were so loving and caring. I thought more about them than my natural parents. I never got in touch with my biological parents through choice. The only thing I can't get is information about my medical conditions because I have no history. I cannot also look at motivation on life. Again, no natural history. Just waiting for the knock on the door from a solicitor to say your biological parents have left you millions. But that would not bother me either. I mean, yes, some people are actually quite relaxed about it. You know, I had a boyfriend who was adopted by his stepdad, like legally adopted as his son. And he had the opportunity to get to know his biological dad and just chose not to. He was completely comfortable with that decision. I don't think that would be the decision I would really want to know.
I know a lot of people that are in that, and they're now they just want to find out their medical history.
Yeah.
But then that is what then opens up. It's a whole, and they were just honestly fine. And I have to be very careful when I talk to adoptees now, because not everybody is ready for this. And even though you might feel you're okay, you get that connection from your birth mother or a family member, then that can be the opening to the avalanche of feelings that you just didn't even realize were there. My cousin, it falls into this, and I know my godmother, my auntie, her adopted mum is probably looking down on me and saying, don't talk to her, please, just leave her alone, let her be. And I think she's right, because she's okay, she's all right, she's okay. But I hope that her sons don't go and look, because I know people that are in their 60s that are okay, and then the minute that DNA ancestry is done, it just opens up a flood of emotions that I didn't even realize were there. And I hope they're not. I hope they're not. I hope everything, because if they are, it's the start of a whole new road, really.
Which is absolutely mirrored throughout life right now. You know, it's like you learn a little bit about how the world works, for instance, or you know, like they say, ignorance is bliss. And, you know, when we are in that state of not knowing, and some people are able to like silence the whispers in their head. I wasn't able to do that, you know. So anytime I felt something's not quite right, I've always like opened up Pandora's box, like some great
Me
like,
too.
Me too. Yeah, me too.
and kind of chucked it upside down and kind of shook all the contents out and gone, oh,
Wow.
and then it's like, now what? Yeah, but some people are able to hear a whisper or get a sense that something's not quite right, and damp it down and ignore that.
I think that's a self-protection thing, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think partly it's a self-protection. It's like, no, I'm quite happy, thanks. Everything's okay. I had a nice upbringing, or this was fine. No, don't. This got nothing to do with that. I don't want to even look at that. I'm going to keep it in its box.
Yeah.
Until someone opens it, like you say, Don. Until someone opens it, it goes, well, there it is. You need to deal with it now.
Surprise.
Yeah.
Like Charles' dad, for instance, during I'm guessing the Second World War, was an evacuee. So there's going to be lots of us in the UK, maybe not us because we're a bit older, a bit younger than Carl, but you know, people who've got parents in their 80s, for instance, or late 80s, early 90s now, if they're still around, but they would have been raised by people whose parents were evacuees. My grandmother, for instance, was evacuated from Belgium to the UK. And so, you know, alongside the lies, there's also a piece about belonging, and that sense, like, where do I belong? Which for me, not having your story, Donna, the sense of belonging is, you know, like, where do I belong? Who do I belong to? Do I belong to the world? Do I belong to my parents? Do I belong to me? That they're really big answers. And I suspect that, you know, when we belong to ourselves, there is a certain level of happiness. I mean, I imagine also there are some people who feel like they never fitted in their families, which is different, but I'm sure there are some kind of repeated themes, you know, like that as above, so below. I'm sure that the experiences that you guys are going through, all the adoptees in their different ways, will be also felt like little waves, you know, like you throw a pebble in the pond. I think, you know, there is an element of us all picking up on this theme, but you guys are the people who have come in and like picking it up, like it's your turn with the baton. Not to describe like life like that, but you know
what you mean. Yeah,
it feels like sometimes some people take it for the team, like for team humanity.
And this is really for real, because I did grow up really a black in a white family as well, so I felt very, you know, being asked how it was being adopted and everyone looking at me, I felt like a beacon, like everybody, it was obvious I was different, very, very different. But now I've got 4 beautiful sisters. We all look the same. When I see videos of me, I'm like, oh, that looks like Sylvia. Oh, I look like Veronica. I've got it all now and more. But it doesn't take all the pain away.
Yeah.
I'm still working through all of this, and I'm so grateful I've got my sisters, but I still don't feel completely like, you know, there's still work to do with me and feeling completely belonging, and you know, I'm getting there. But just having all of this now doesn't fix it. It's not like a plaster that's like, okay, that's fixed now. Then you've still got all of this. So complex. And it's really interesting what you say about evacuees as well. This is all just it's such a big thing on our emotions, and it helps me understand why there is so much trauma here, because it goes back so far. And it's like we're still carrying it.
I think it's part deliberate as well, you know, but and you've got it all over the world. It's not just like in certain pockets of the world, but you've got refugees that are being forced out of their area because of war. You've got, you know, parents that aren't able to afford their children or to be able to look after their children. And there's so much trauma in this world. It's unreal. It's almost like it's a test to break us as humanity. Like they're going to put as much people under as much trauma as they possibly can. But again, I do think that this is the time that we should be working through it all. And it's kind of like we're going from one phase to another, and it's our time to heal it so it doesn't go over to the next phase and continue. But
I turn it around. I love the ways you did that, because I always look at the world, it's a wrong way round. We need to turn it around. And there's a lot of angry people, and there's a lot of all sorts of emotions. But what can we do? I could get angry with the system, with all the people that did all these things. Well, they didn't necessarily know either. So what can we do? Well, we need to just do the opposite to what's being done. So, and I'm noticing the more good.
What is the opposite? What is the opposite?
Just doing like what I'm doing now, which is good. I'm doing something good. I want to eventually be speaking, and I want social workers there. I want child professionals there that are in this arena, that are doing this now, that are these so-called minions that are doing what they're doing because the system's telling them to. I want to get into their hearts.
Yeah.
And I want them. So that's my little piece of turning this around. And the more I'm doing good, like here, trying to do good, the more things are getting in my way and showing me that I've got to keep going, because this is the opposite. This is what will get this system crumbling. Not just me, but all of us, you, Jenny, what we're doing now. Let's just keep doing good. Let's keep the anger away, because that doesn't help. That's negative. Let's keep positive, because we've got so many negative forces on all levels, like huge, like these refugees and everything, the big system and smaller. So let's just do our little bit. And I might just beware, because as you start doing good, I think we're being attacked. We're being attacked to stop us. And yet we need, and that now I'm like, wow, that's given me more sort of ammunition to go forward and do good and keep smiling through the fear, because it's the fear that's knocked me down all my life and made me feel rubbish and not achieve any, well, not achieve, but not get to where I was so confused. And I really don't want that to happen now. I want to move through this and start making a difference for all these other children that are going through life misunderstood like we were. So yeah, Jenny, turning the world around. It's upside down. Children should be at the top. They're gold. Like, we should be like the children. They should definitely not be taken away from their mothers. That should be like the very last thing that we ever do on this planet. And if we are going to do it, we are really treating that so carefully. But we're not doing that. We just send them off here. And yeah, it's the system. So they're doing this. What can we do to fight back? But without the fight, as in love. What can we do?
I had an interview with Jeff and Helen last week. Jeff works with children that have had terrible diagnoses, like his own son had what looked like an incurable cancer, and he was working with the medical system using mindfulness. He's got a really long story and it's really beautiful, and I've got links and I can share it. I mean, his story is amazing. But what he was saying is, you can't change a system. You've got to draw a line next to it and work with it to create, like, you can't change it by trying to usurp it. You kind of got to get in there and make something bigger next to it, which is what he's doing. Because the moment a system realizes you're attacking it, it goes straight back into attack. And what occurs to me right now is, like, I was doing a forecast, because we're going through this, we're going into a new Mars cycle for the next 2 years. And I was looking at the chart of this start of this new 2-year Mars cycle, which is all about survival, and the really strong asteroid Ceres, which is about motherhood, is absolutely right at the epicenter of this aspect for the next 2 years. And like, it's all featured around Mars and Scorpio, which is all about secrets being revealed, all the muck coming up to be analyzed, looked at, dredged through. But Ceres, she's not just about motherhood, she's also about grief. Ceres, known as Demeter, if you look in the mythology, she lost her daughter. Her daughter was abducted into the underworld. She got partial visitation from her daughter, like 6 months of every year, according to the stories. But it's about the cycle of grief that a mother goes through when she loses her child. So I actually believe this is the right time for you, Donna, to be going on this journey. Like, the astrology of it is there. It's taking you by the hand and letting you know this is a time when we're all facing grief right now. Not just the grief of our own children, but the grief of every other child that has been put at the bottom of the pile and not been put at the top. So you're bang on there.
Well, really. And I love this Jeff, did you say his name?
Jeff Granville.
Right,
Jeff.
okay. Because mindfulness is for me was the key, like going on a retreat in 2001 and learning that you could actually, my mind isn't actually in control of me. I'm in control of my mind. It was a huge revelation. And then that was the start of a journey of realizing that I could slow and calm this mind down and maybe shift some of these dark thoughts. And 20 years ago, that was an absolute godsend. So I really do, with everything I do, I would always start with mindfulness. We can't move forward to our body where everything is stored until we've sort of cleared some of this and got some tools to do that.
He's created a very simple breathing technique that he calls STIR, somatic trauma imprint release breathing. So I'll put a link in, and it's really like an easy 5-minute thing that you can do many times a day. And if there are sore points in your body associated with trauma, but like if you can tune into the trauma, that breathing pattern, it helps to work with your vagal nerve and all sorts of different bits and pieces. I was also chatting to somebody called Felix yesterday, and he said, even when we don't know, we really do. And that really resonated with me, because, there are people that don't know, like you were saying, they don't know their history, but actually they really do. But also he was saying that in terms of, sometimes we seem to be working in our own worst interests, like going into something, even if we know it's not right, or not being able to find our way through grief or beyond grief. But actually, he says, wherever we are is actually where we are, and it's actually the right place. And it is the right place until you know that it's time to move on to the next bit, that wherever we are is right.
Yeah, I can see that in all my books, looking through all my books. You can see, you can read, there's something else. I'm searching for something, but I don't know what it is. It's my adoption trauma. I know there's something. And when you read my books, it's like I'm on this search and I'm looking for, so I know. But I love what you're saying there. But I was in that place at that time on this journey. And now when I look at it, I'm like, wow, I was meant to be where I was throughout that, and to get to here now. And me, my higher self, and me, even in my darkest days, has helped me get here. Because I've written down all of this. I've sort of been exploring without knowing what I'm exploring, but knowing something's not right.
Yeah.
Because if everything is right, why am I writing it down? I'm okay. But no, I'm always writing. I was always writing, looking for, like, searching for something that's not quite right. Well, maybe I'll do that training course, or I'll read that book, or I'll do this. Like, what was I looking for?
Me too.
I think you're in good company. Can I just share the last few thoughts? Oh, it's actually quite a few of them. And then I think we need to wrap up, because I'm really mindful of the time. Like, you guys have given your time away to have this conversation, and I really appreciate you for that. And I also really appreciate the people that are bringing their thoughts to the table. So Susie's saying, I found a scandal on bio great grandfather's side. He was married 3 times. First two wives died in childbirth. Third wife, younger, he caught in a compromising situation with another woman. Oh God. So he threw her and their kids out and then moved to the USA from Finland. We have no idea what goes on in the past, do we? Oh my goodness. So much of this is our pretense of civilization, isn't it? Real life is carnal, messy and wild. We take part in a preferred conspiracy that pretends it isn't so, don't we? And then we are shocked. Yeah. Will people on their deathbed say, I wasted so much time, not just at the office, but also in my sad stories? Like, life was always asking me to enjoy her in every minute as I lay there lifeless and sad. Oh, Carl, going for it today. Wonderful, Donna. Stick as closely and lovingly to the truth as possible. Susie's saying, sad stories interest us, but can only watch a bit of Long Lost Family show. Too moving. A friend wants to move to Europe. I said, do you have a grandparent to use for reunification? She said, can't do it because she was adopted. Oh my goodness. So yeah, there are our nationality and everything can make such a difference. To anyone who is sad because of me, I release you. Please release me. Immigration law cannot be unfair, Suze. It's all made up. This is riveting. Thank you so much. Carl, Whom do you make sad? You bring joy to so many. Focus on that. Oh, bless you. I get sad sometimes with him. We fall out. And I release you from it, love. I'm not sure I truly make anyone sad other than my wife. Other than any other. I do feel a responsibility for understanding what happened. However, when that happens, I think that was it. Last thing, the tragedies, victories, and stories of survival may give us many emotions and hopefully a better understanding of ourselves and where we came from when that information is available. I think that's a good moment to thank everyone that's joined us today. Any final thoughts, you two beauties?
I think that we have to rewrite our energetic blueprint, really. And
yeah,
that's
what I was talking about yesterday.
That
was yesterday's show.
Oh, was it? I didn't listen. Oh, spooky vibing. Yeah. No, that we have an energetic blueprint and we have the ability to change it.
Yeah.
What, with our intention, our focus, our imagination?
Yeah, and self-belief, I suppose, is a big thing.
So we're more powerful than we realise.
You are way more powerful than you think you are, definitely.
Yeah, I'm doing a magic show tomorrow, but I'm actually doing it to adults.
An actual magic show?
Instead of, I'm a children's magician. And I've done occasional adult magician, like swallowed a balloon and done all sorts of fancy stuff. It's really hard work. The children's stuff is really easy, and they've been wanting me to do this at this performance, and I'm like, okay, but I'm going to treat all the adults. I'm going to do a presentation, but you're going to be children for 10 minutes. You're going to be children. You're going to use your imagination. You're going to clap. You're going to cheer. You're going to get back to your childhood. And it just came to me to say that when you were talking, Jenny, because I think that's a really important thing for everyone now, is to, whenever I do children, and I can sort of see the adults that are there with their child, they love it. They love getting out of themselves and clapping, especially when I give them permission and they go, what did you say? And get them to really respond the way that children do. So I'm really looking forward to that on Friday, because tomorrow, tomorrow, to get confused, it's Thursday today, because I think it's really important for adults to be reminded of stepping back into that, because I think we moved through it too quickly again because of this conditioning, and we've moved into adulthood without really, and we've left our inner child behind. A lot of them are traumatized, but a lot of them also still want to have fun. So let's connect those two together. So as much as I'm it's all a bit deep and emotional.
Yeah, magic and inner child is good. It's good.
Yeah,
I like
so there's a kind of a purpose other than just there's a purpose for me. They don't know that, but I'm obviously going to do the magic and whatever. But there's a purpose for me in really in doing this, in getting these adults to really feel good, like they've not felt for a while, and remember that, and do more of that.
Oh, you're wonderful. Oh, I wish I could see it. Do you video them? Are you gonna?
There will be someone that will video. Eric's going, so I'll get him to do a video.
I'd love to see it, please.
Yeah,
me too.
All right. Well, already you're like little children, aren't you?
Can I have a balloon?
I'll make you a dog or a sword.
I'll have a giraffe. A giraffe.
Oh, you guys are wonderful. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you for sharing your stories, your thoughts, your heart, your energy, your love, and to everyone else as well. It's really nice to connect with you all today. Have a beautiful rest of day and a weekend, and we'll be back on the Barefoot Broadcast next Monday. Lots and lots of love to you. Bye for now.
Bye.